Well, here we are once again where we talk to the leaders in sports, business and entertainment, and another episode of Fork in the Road, and wrapped to sit down with this bloke. I actually was fortunate enough to play footy with him at Carlton for a couple of years. As I mentioned, he's a Carlton superstar, AFL MVP. He's well and truly into his health and fitness, which we'll cover that. You can see the Koutoufides T-shirt there. More importantly, he was centre half back in the Greek AFL team of the century. Kouta, centre half back, what is going on there?
Not sure, Corey. We needed numbers, so they just put me anywhere in the Greek team of the century, but I'll take that. Look, for me, it's funny because I made the Italian team of the century too, but just out of the respect of my father to know that, I made that team it's an honour for me, and I can take it with me forever. But we had some names in there that you can, have a bit of a question mark whether they're really, truly Greek or not. And but it was, just fantastic for me.
Who are the ones? Let's name some names.
Please don't test my memory. So I need to have a look at the team and then I can question a couple. But I think, was Russell Morris in there?
Now, I don't know. Morris doesn't strike me as a real Greek name. I wouldn't have thought it really rolls off the tongue as one of the great Greek names going around.
Well, usually you've got to have at least 10 letters in your surname, I reckon, to be that you should be accepted into that team, not 6. So, certainly not that. I'll need to go through the team itself, Corey. It's been a while since the induction of the Greek team of the century, so I'm not exactly sure. But if we went through the names, I'm sure we'd have a bit of a laugh.
Well, I think we would. But so, how have we been coping with the pandemic, mate? Like, what have you been doing? I know, as we mentioned off the top, that you're very big. You've always been very big into health and fitness. But what are some of the things that you've been doing to thrive through a bad time?
It was it was a bit of a shock initially, no doubt. I'm sure it was for everyone. It was that little bit of the unsureness of what was going to come afterwards of all the, after the epidemic, and, financially for a lot of people too, I'm sure, have been impacted in a big way, and we've all been affected in some sort of way. So initially it was that shock. It was like, oh my goodness, so what do we do now here? But I know with lockdown, it was okay, let me set some goals, because when I retired from footy, Corey, in all honesty, I was a little bit lost in life and a bit unsure of what to do. But what I continued to do was write down my goals, do a bit more reading. So I guess I was doing personal development without even realising it. And it sort of helped me get through that period of, I wouldn't say depression, but certainly a low period of my life. And I thought, okay, what do I do here now? And through everything that I do with my current business, we really tend to work on ourselves daily. And so that means I made a commitment to myself to not change my routine and continue to work. So I set some goals throughout the day. And when I set goals, that means I've got to get up early. I get excited to get up early, and I have tasks to do. So then my day goes to plan as normal. What I didn't want to do was get into some of the bad habits that I'm sure a lot of people do, and that is, sleeping in, maybe not starting the day with a healthy breakfast. And so then it's sort of like catch up for the rest of the day, gets a bit difficult, start heading to the cupboards. And before they realise that after 6 weeks have been in a bad physical way and a bad mental way. And so for me, my routine, Corey, is getting up and, I do my meditation. It's something that if you had have asked me to do maybe 2-3 years ago, I would have told you maybe where to go. But now I put that as part of my routine, a bit of visualisation in the morning. I have my goals and affirmations, which is all part of what our business sort of expectations are. In particular, people that join our business, we sort of expect them to do those sort of things to grow as a person over time. And so I've just committed to that, Corey. And so I found it really enjoyable, actually, to just be able to really concentrate on just one thing, and that is my business of healthy, active lifestyle and getting new coaches and building my organisation through this period. And so by doing that and having less distractions during football season, which usually I'm flying interstate and doing footy talks here, or maybe some business talks or corporate talks or whatever, now I've just been able to focus. So to me, it's been a pleasant surprise, like really, I've coped with it really well.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned meditation. Who would have thought you're going to have you and I covering off meditation, Kouta? Because I was very similar about 3-4 years ago, where I discovered it, and I've continued to refine it over the journey. And if I could probably recommend one thing to everyone out there to take on board, you've got two AFL MVPs, mind you. And if there's one thing I could recommend very highly is trying to take on some form of meditation. Now, the one thing I found, and I'll be interested to get your thoughts, I found the best part about it is that you get the hell out of your own way. I nearly find sometimes using the word actual meditation might scare a lot of people off. I think that's the best way to describe it is, hey, if there's something that you can help get out of your own way and clear your head, it's a great tool to use, and I can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you what, Corey, although we played AFL, all those things that we achieved in our career, we're no different to any other person. Anxiety, depression, and all these hit us like anyone else. And so I had a little bit of anxiety, 1.5, sort of 2 years ago, and I thought, okay, what do I need to do? And so I started to search things like meditation that I never ever thought that I would do. And I thought, okay, clear the mind, because for a good 2 years before that, I was like, I'd be sitting on the couch because I built up my business to a very decent level, and I think maybe took it for granted. I'm not sure, but I was always a worker. But I'd sit on the couch and go, I just feel like I'm so busy, but I'm not doing anything, and I'm sitting there just going, I just got lack of time now. What is it? Because of this sort of thing. We sit on the phone and we're searching through, and I start my morning that way. And when you start your morning that way, I was like, you're in that frame of mind. And that's when the meditation part, I thought, okay, as I started to look into it like yourself and study and didn't know what I was doing. I was like breathing like this. I didn't know what I had to do. And like what you say, refined it over time. I sort of found a couple of things that I'm enjoying now. I'm not saying that I've found the key to it. I'm no expert at it, but I'm enjoying it. I can see benefits at this stage doing what I'm incorporating into my morning routine. And hence the reason why I've done it. So I found like, okay, in the morning, get off that phone, clear the mind. So then you set your day. I read through my goals and stuff like that as well. So I'm clearing what I need to do. And then I started that way. And that's hence the reason why I could probably, like yourself, I tend to get up that little bit early. Today was a bit of a sleep, and I felt like, sometimes at training, we train every day, and sometimes that rest day is just as important as a training day. So today I felt like I just needed to sleep in. I've been doing a lot of calls internationally, staying up later at night, getting to bed, maybe having some restless sleeps. And so this one I was able to sleep and I feel refreshed all of a sudden. So I've got another huge day of work to do. But the important thing is always trying to find time for the family, getting out in particular now to get a bit of fresh air. So last night between calls, I quickly grabbed my dog Coco. My son Jamie was at the park, so I walked my dog down there, hung out with him there, was able to walk the dog, quickly come back, here and, do another call online with some of our team in South Africa. So, it's been great, Corey, the difference it's made for me. I think clarity and, being clear, because I've always prided on myself on hard work, but that the phone can be a major distraction for a lot of people.
Yeah. And then, so what was it, Kouta, that actually, I know you mentioned anxiety, and I know a lot of people are going through anxiety at the moment. So everyone looks at Anthony Koutoufides, the big Greek god, Shong, but it just goes to show that everyone can go through, those same tough periods. So it's probably, for everyone out there listening in, what did you do in terms of, you mentioned meditation. Was there any particular form of meditation that you've gone towards, whether it's transcendental meditation or there's all sorts of like gratitude, all these sorts of different things. So what was the one just for people out there that really resonated with you? Because especially there's probably a lot of people out there at the moment, wondering, okay, what can I do to thrive through the pandemic?
Yeah, I'm no expert, Corey. In all honesty, I don't even really understand, some of the differences. I found a couple of things where I paid, to do a 3-month course where it might only be $80 online or whatever. It's more just for me investing in myself to find out, okay, what's good over here? What about this person? And what about that person? So I found a couple of things now that I'm really enjoying, and I've implemented that. In turning back, like you're talking about, that anxiety and depression and all that, in 1998, I lost my father. It was the toughest period of my life. I was a young kid. I wasn't ready for it. I was still living at home. I used to drive mum and dad to the games, and I drove mum to my, all the way through my career until my last game. But to not have my father in the car in 1998, it was just a different feeling for me. It was very uneasy. And Corey, back in our day, there was no like, I feel sorry. There's no, he's going through a mental tough period or whatever. It was like, man, you're going to play footy, and their expectations are that the supporters expect you to play well, the club does. And so we had to go out there, and no matter what challenges we're facing in our life, we had to perform on the ground. And so, some people, I've had a couple of people say, like, now if I do a post and saying, come on, guys, we can do it and we can push through it, and someone will say, oh, it's a tough time and a lot of people are struggling. I understand that. And I feel sorry for them too. But I say to the guy, well, in 1998, when I was going through a tough period and I lost my father, the expectations were from the club and the supporters that I'd be best on ground every week. And when I wasn't, I got criticised for it. You know what? I had to stand up as a man if I wanted to. And then because I wanted to play football, I had to do it. And I got a little bit carried away that year, drinking a lot, and my form really suffered until I got to a point where Wayne Britton and Barry Mitchell sat me down and said, you know what, Kouta, if you really want to continue playing, you're really unfit at the moment. You'll be out of the system within, before you realise it. So it's really up to you what you want to do. And I was like, I want to play football. So when I went home and I thought about my father, and I got emotional that night because my terrible footy, criticism, Mike Sheen on the back page of Herald Sun, dropped Kouta, all these things that I was going through, I want my father here, he's not here, it's unfair, feeling sorry for myself. Why me? I had to then, at that point in time, I looked up above and I was thinking of my father, and I thought, what does my dad want me to do? Just drink my life away, or does he want to see me play good footy? And that's when I promised him, I said, Dad, I promise now I'm going to train harder than I ever did before. And that's when I did, Corey. And from that moment onwards, I slowly got myself back into great form. By the end of 1998, I had some really good, consistent form. But then come 99, 2000 MVP award, 2001, another great year, was all because of what stemmed from the loss of my father. So the tough times make us stronger, I guess, if we persist, Corey, and not give in to it. And so hence the reason why I try to put it out there for people too. I'm not immune to anything. I felt anxiety a couple of years ago. I'm not sure why. Are we, Corey, used to the pressure and the stresses of life that other people can't cope with, and so we accept it, and maybe our bodies don't really like it, but we just think it's a normal part of life because we grew up in that system. That I don't know, because people say, but Kouta, you work too hard, you must be under stress. I'm like, this is not stress. I enjoy and love what I do. Footy, to me, in particular the last 5 years, when the club culture, different coach, different president came, that was more stress for me than what current life is, and I was able to cope with it. So I'm not sure, Corey, what the right balance is. All I know is that, like what I said before, I'm not immune to anything that anyone suffers out there. And when I went through the tough period of retiring, it was tough. And no one came to me and said, mate, look, let me pick you up and I'm going to take you and I'm going to help and guide you. I have to work it out myself. And I think that's the best way to do it, is that you push through it, set some goals and, some guidelines for yourself during the day. It's almost like, I'm going to head this way. Otherwise, the brain will take you to wherever it wants to take you if you're not guiding it to where you want to go to. And that's how I see life, and through all the experiences that I've had in growing up and learning footy and the tough moments and the obstacles. Because people look at your career and go, oh my God, look at that, 2 best and fairest MVP, all Australian a couple of times. That's all okay, but I'll talk you through the process and how tough it was to get through there. And then if you're capable and willing to do it, then you get to make the AFL Hall of Fame as well. If not, then, you don't make it. And so it was tough, and nothing comes easy. And I had a quote the other day, and the only thing I know is just to work hard every single day. I don't even want it to be easy, because if it's easy, you don't actually grow as a person. And if you work for it, you start to grow as a person. And I think in life, that's all I want to do, Corey. I've learned now. I don't want to be stagnant in life. I want to continue to grow and get better. And that's my philosophy now. Whether that's right or wrong or whatever, that's something that I'm going to do and try to guide. And, my kids can have a look to see what I do and understand that in this life, nothing comes easy. We've got to work for it.
Exactly right. Now, just circling back, how vital, I suppose, with everyone, one thing that I'm glad about, that I actually played other sports, but you having a passion in athletics, it obviously then had a lasting effect of then, did you feel like it was an advantage then going into AFL football that you'd come from that background as well?
100%, Corey. At the age of 8, I watched my brother compete in the summer period for the first half of the season in athletics, and then I had the courage to get out there myself. I was a little bit of a shy kid. That's when we started football at the age of 8 in winter, and then in summer he took up athletics, so I did as well. By grade 5, I was a state high jump champion with not too much really sort of training. I'm like, okay, so I flew out. We had to go and compete in Sydney. I think I came 6th in Australia. Not bad for a guy with migrant parents who had no idea what he was doing. And I got billeted out to a wonderful Australian family for a good week. And, you know, I cried, you know, because I wanted mum. And, you know, I was in grade 5. I just look at my son now, Lucas, whose birthday, you know, is coming up, and he's in grade 4. I think, geez, in another year, if he went, you know, living with someone in Sydney for a week, I'd be like, whoa, man, as a father. So I did that. And then grade 6, I represented Victoria again in the Pacific School Games. But it wasn't until I was 14 I actually got some proper coaching. I went to a clinic down Olympic Park, which was the mecca of athletics, and there were some national coaches there. And one of the high jump national coach, it was a lady initially, she said, come over here, I actually want to coach you. And then after that clinic, she said, I actually want to coach you full time. So if you want to come to Olympic Park, I will coach you. And I thought, I had some mates. My brother was like, he became state champion in hurdles. My other mates were like state champions in 100. Like, we had this group of athletes, I don't know, Corey, that we all lived to get like in the same suburbs. And we all went through that way. And so we all started training Olympic Park from after school. We'd all meet each other at Thomastown Station. We'd go down to Jollymont and walk off and go in there. And then Sandro Bizzetto, who was the national high jump coach, then became my coach. But I became Australian champion, you know, in under 15s, I jumped 196, and under 16s, 2 metres. And then under 17s, I got, at the age of 16, got beaten by Tim Forsyth, who was Australian. You know, he was one of the world's best high jumpers, and he jumped 2 metres 16, I jumped 2 metres 8. But then I won the 110 metre hurdles Australian title with an Australian record. And so I was pretty much unbeatable in the multi-event sort of decathlon thing. So I could have maybe have been Olympian. Kyle Vanderkot went on to come 7th in the Olympic final. I think it was Atlanta. Phenomenal athlete. I watched him ever since he was a junior.
Yeah.
Specifically just hurdles, and he trained. And so at that time when I ran the Australian record, I guess I was quicker than him, you know what I mean? Like, and I just sort of took up hurdles maybe 2 years before that, all because it was part of the decathlon. You know what I mean? It was all the events that I did. And so I was a really raw talent. I have some footage of myself competing at Doncaster against B graders, and it was the first time I did the actual Olympic height hurdles. And these two guys that were at Doncaster were, you know, the guys that were like unbeatable there. And when there's this little punk 16-year-old kid from the northern suburbs who was there, and obviously they would have known who I was, racing them for the first time. There was this big, like, can this young kid beat these guys at B grade? It's almost like maybe state hurdles finals contenders or whatever they were. And, you know, I went out there and I beat them. And the footage shows them, like, as I'm going, boom, boom, they started to panic and they were hitting hurdles, and I was just getting through it, you know, and I beat them. But so I had a phenomenal athletics career. And by the age of 14, I got the letter from the Carlton Football Club. So the Carlton recruiters were trying to say, Kouta, give up athletics and take up footy full time. I'm like, no way, man. That training was too hard footy. I was like, oh, God, no, under 19s. I'm going to do athletics for as long as I can. And there came a moment where Carlton called us up and said, we want to offer you a contract. And it was a 3-year contract. And that's when I decided it was probably time to give up athletics. I loved it as a sport. Did I love it more than footy? Maybe, because there's a starting line or there's the height of the bar, and you couldn't, you know, it wasn't the person's perception of who was best on ground. It was like, there's a start, there's a finish. Whoever wins is the best. You know what I mean? And footy was a little bit different in that. But to me, growing up, the footballers were iconic. They were like who I wanted to be also. It was, you know, as much as it was a tough game, then I thought I could live at home. I didn't have to travel without mum and dad, and I was a little bit of a homeboy, you know. And so by accepting that contract, I then gave up athletics. And, you know, in hindsight, do I regret not, you know, pursuing athletics and seeing where I could have gone? Maybe little bits, but I certainly know that I picked the right choice of football, because any athletes that came through my time, you know, didn't finish their career with a lot of money. And I competed against Jai Tarima in the hurdles, and I used to be able to beat him, and he went on to win a silver medal at the Sydney Olympic Games in the long jump. So I competed against him in the decathlon as well. And phenomenal athlete, don't get me wrong. And, yeah, I was able to, you know, beat like people like that who went on to represent Australia at the Olympics. So maybe potentially, Corey, I could have. I mean, I just sort of started proper training, you know, a year or maybe 2 before, you know, I was running Australian records and stuff like that. So that was without pre-season. So I assume maybe if I had good pre-season and built up my power and didn't do the longer running of football and getting bashed and crashed, that maybe I could have taken my athletics to another level. Maybe I could have been in an Olympic final one day, or doing, you know, in the hurdles, or doing the decathlon representing Australia. I certainly was a bit like an untested, you know, potential. There was a lot, I guess, there. But anyway, footy was the choice.
Well, you made footy as your choice. I've just got a bit of thought the sound was a bit funny there. You made the choice to, obviously, you head down to the Carlton Footy Club. What's it like? And look, North Melbourne's obviously a little bit of a different club in terms of who I had to, you walk into the club at that time. But when you walk into Carlton, when you got Kernahan, Bradley, Silvani, Madden, like all these massive names, what's it like for a young Kouta coming from the under-19s? Like, how hard was it breaking into that? There's a lot of big names and big personalities there.
It was hard, Corey. I came from that background, and people always say I was more of an athlete than a footballer, but a lot of people don't realise that I started footy at the age of 8. In grade 4, we had over 1,000 students at our school, and the primary school teachers were asking my brother Paul, who was in grade 5, can you ask your brother to play for us? And so when they came to me in grade 4, I'm not playing against grade 5s and 6s, but I ended up playing, kicking goals. So by grade 6, I was the captain of our school. We finished second in Victoria, so we were the best metropolitan team, but the country team would look like men compared to us. They would have been out in the farms working. We're city slickers riding our bikes around. They punished us. But, representing the Diamond Valley, deputy vice captain, all these things, I came through the ranks of playing 2 years under 15s at Carlton, to then under 19s, making the All-Australian Till Cup centre-half back. So I walked in. I remember Kevin Sheen writing an article. This guy here could, potentially have a lot of potential. But I could see as I walked through the door, there was a few guys thinking, "Who's this young punk?" And that's, I guess, normal. And I came in with maybe being the All-Australian kid, centre back, and so-called athlete. Let's see what he's like. I remember walking through the corridors, though, Corey, and you understand the Carlton Football Club a little, but I walked in as a young kid, and I'm looking at the walls and just the history and the power, the prestige of this club, because I was a Collingwood supporter and cried every year when Carlton beat us. And here I am walking through the corridors as a senior player, 200-game club players, and all these legends, like, as I walk through. And I walked through into this place of incredible leadership, power, success, and premiership players. And there I was, this young kid walking through these doors, and I was so nervous and scared and unsure of, what was going to happen. There was big boys there. I knew they were going to attack me and test me. And it was our responsibility. And David Payne, I was a shy kid. David always said, well, you've got to get out there and let them accept you. Whereas nowadays it's more like the older guys going to the new guys, oh, welcome, welcome. It was like, It was up to us to put ourselves out there and be accepted by the big dogs. You know what I mean? Otherwise, mate, if you weren't part of this team, out you go. And so we had to go out of my way. Now, here's these guys, Kernahan and, Bradley, Silvani, and all these legends, and Diesel Williams came the next year. And so, I had to go out of my way and try. But I remember the club putting me in the fastest group, Corey. I had no endurance. Even that. I had terrible endurance. And we're doing 5100s, this so-called athlete. Let's see how good he is. We'll put him in the fastest group. After 1 or 2, mate, I'm done and dusted. You know what I mean? Like, my athletics training was 6 150s as hard as you could, or whatever, you bargained. But that was it. We didn't run 800s or 1500s. I was no good at that stuff. And we're doing 5-kilometre sprints, basically, 5100s with a jog back in a certain time. So by about number 37, 38, I needed to stretch them. I was done and dusted. I don't think I could walk for a week after that. So I got punished, man, like in that first group doing 800s and 400s. I couldn't keep up with them, man. I wasn't, quite ready for it. I don't think David Parkin was impressed by that. But he didn't realise too that, I was more power and speed and jump. And if you put plyometrics and started doing jumps like that, I would absolutely destroy everyone that'd be like that far behind me. It was ridiculous. But the 8-kilometre runs, 10-kilometre runs on concrete or whatever started affecting the body, tendonitis in the knees. And, I feel like, Corey, if I came into the system now with the training a lot smarter, I probably would have been able to propel even more, because I had all this, power and speed and whatever. But that, was eliminated or, decreased over time with just that old-fashioned running that we did back then. It was footy and it was the running that we did. But, I went back to Doncaster and tried a high jump. I've gone from 2 meters 8 to 1 meter 80. You know what I mean? Like, it was a big difference. I literally I couldn't jump because my knees were sore and the impact of footy in that pre-season. So I walked into that environment. It was tough and hard. We demanded its success, and John Elliott set the standard. I love Jack. I think he was the greatest president of that football club ever. And when he just made me feel like I was part of the family, part of the furniture. when he came to me before a game and say, "Your day today, Kouta," I was like, "Mate, if you told me to run through a brick wall, I would have done it." That's how much I loved him. I respected him. He loved us, protected us, and he was just that family environment that he created there, unlike the other presidents that came after him, who then put his name down. Well, I can tell you the honest truth, he was the greatest, and I wanted to play for him in the club for that reason. It was a different scenario after that. And so Jack, every time he touched me, I felt like I could run through a brick wall. He set the standard to basically say, if you want to be at this club and be remembered, you've got to be a premiership player. And so we went for it. We felt the pressure and, that came along with it. But we're representing the Carlton Football Club, and this is it. Everyone wanted to come and play for us. And, if we put it out there, do you want to come to our club? We'll be the first one. The players would want to come. It wasn't like that later on. And so I was very lucky, Corey, because I walked into a great environment of incredible leadership. And so I was a bit of a lazy kid, I guess a talented kid that probably didn't realise how hard you had to work in footy to really get to where you wanted to. But I could look over time and start to learn as I started to struggle in that first year, not get a game at the end of the season, look and go, where can I improve? And then I knew, I go, okay, righty, I need to put on a little bit of size. I've got to get stronger. I didn't really realise the fitter part of it, but by just putting size after that first pre-season, all of a sudden I'm playing a full-back in the reserves, pretty much beating everyone. And then eventually I got my opportunity to play senior footy. It took me a long time to become a bona fide, as in selected pretty much all week. It took me 3.5 years of heartache and pain to get there, but it was certainly worth it.
This episode is brought to you by National Make Good Solutions, experts in taking your commercial property back to the day it was built at the end of your lease. Yeah. Well, you're fortunate enough to win the flag in 1995, but I'm just going to fast forward to 2000. What's it like trying to explain to everyone out there, because I don't know whether you've actually heard me, like when people have actually asked me, when they'll go, who was the best player that you played with and who was the best player that you played against? And obviously there was a bloke that wore number 18 would probably be the best player that I played with. But I always say the footy that you played in 2000 was the best footy that I'd ever seen. And then in particular, there was a game that you played against North Melbourne when I was at North Melbourne. And I think you had 39 possessions and kicked 5 goals against the Kangas that day. And I just try and explain to people what that period of football was like for you, because I know I rate it the best that I'd ever played against.
Yeah, it's a good question, Corey. It all stemmed from the loss of my father in 98. But 99 was an incredible year. I pretty much beat everyone at centre-half back, except for probably Richo. Richo was always my toughest opponent. I'm not sure why, Matthew Richardson, but he was. And so in 1999, pretty much beat everyone. And then at times they would throw me into the midfield, and all of a sudden, bang, I would start to get all these possessions. And so by the time year 2000 came and I started centre-half back, it was about round 7. I reckon it was round 7. Was it Richmond or maybe a game before that? Playing a centre back, I'm getting all these touches. Even on Treadway, I had 20-something, 27, 28 possessions centre back or something on Treadway. Couldn't get a kick. Great player. I was obviously in great form. Maybe he wasn't as much because he, later on, of course, carved me up. So I'm not saying, whatever. But that's what was happening. And then I'll play half. At centre-half back, I remember the Richmond game. I think they put a tag on me, Ben Harrison, who was an ex-teammate of mine, great guy. And then I'm taking all these marks and getting the ball, and they just couldn't penetrate through. But the game was sort of still in the balance, and then bang, put me in the midfield, boom, boom, started happening, goals, man, game over. They did the same thing against Sydney Swans. And Sydney Swans, I started centre-half back, put me in the midfield, and it's halfway through the second quarter where the game was like, even next thing they know, well, 5 goals, 7 goals in front or whatever. And I ended up that game with 39 possessions, 14 marks, 2 goals, and something like 5 contested marks or whatever it was as well. So it wasn't like nowadays where you just get the little, mark. You know what it was like in our day. Mm-hmm. And then I know I came up against you guys, Corey, North Melbourne. You guys were the stumbling block. I thought if we're a better team this year, we need to beat you guys, because from 95 we beat you in the prelim. We haven't beaten you since then. You're one of those teams that could just get us all the time. And so I was pretty fired up for that day. The duck came to me also in that period. So, yeah, I was pretty much in the midfield all day that day, Corey, and hence the reason why. Like, Wayne Britton just understood me and Barry Mitchell. I think David Parker never really understood what I could do on the football field if you just let me play. I felt like sometimes with David Parker, I was stuck in a cage. I knew I had more to give, but I was dictated by a coach. And I couldn't say to him, mate, it's a bit like saying, you know, Greg Williams, you're good in the midfield, but just go play up forward and see how you go. We would never have seen the best in Greg Williams. We've seen the best in Greg when he played in the midfield. For me, the midfield was my greatest position, because if you let me just run to places where I wanted to run, I could just free flow and understand the game. I was good. If you limited me, then I was, I guess, limited as a player. And that's where Barry Mitchell and Wayne Britton could see something in me. And so they started playing me in the midfield, and I started to really excel. What was that period like? To me, it was just like every game, no different. I would look at it, sit with Barry Mitchell and see the rooms of improvement. I don't know. Did I take it for granted? I just see it as, the involvement of football. As I started to learn and get better in the peaks of my power, I was able to excel in that way and get a coach that understood me, a coach that if I was getting tagged in the midfield, I could just go up forward and say, boys, open up the forward line, just kick the ball in, and off we went and started kicking some goals. And so I was just played in the way that utilised my full talent, and because of that, I was able to excel. But people forget too, Corey, like 99, I came second in the best and fairest. I actually missed the last 5 games because of a knee injury, so I should have probably won. 2000, I came third in the best and fairest, but clearly that was my best year. I just unfortunately had injuries too, and so I didn't win the best and fairest. But 2001, I won the best and fairest, and I had another ripping year, maybe not as many contested marks, after coming back from an injury that took me 9 months to come back from. And I think I was best on ground the last 3 weeks of that home and away series, best on ground the first week of the final against Adelaide, where I had 36 possessions and just, carved it up. And then by the next week after the September 11 incident, we played against Richmond. And then I did my knee where Matthew Knights came across my knee and snapped my anterior. So I missed pretty much not all year, but most of the year, and I think that's when you came to the club. So just a little bit unlucky in the peaks of my period, Corey, that I probably had a few injuries. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened afterwards.
Yeah. And I often wonder, and we actually spoke about this off air, do you often wonder that, like in that grand final against North Melbourne, obviously you've come to me and playing on me down back. Do you wonder after the previous week where they just let but it sounds also that was a common thing where you would start down back. But do you often wonder that they should have just maybe rolled the dice in the grand final and gone, you know what, we'll land the first punch first rather than try and get into, it sounded like they were trying to absorb everything that you had and then let you go. But do you often wonder if they had to just let you go in that grand final and gone, you know what, our best chance is to let Kouta off the leash? Yeah,
I know in hindsight, you're right, Corey. I mean, I played on you, kicked the 2 goals. So whatever they wanted to do didn't work. And we was just catch-up footy after that. And it was just too hard. So, look, I think I was thinking too, are they going to just play me in the midfield all day, or are they going to start me, in defence and maybe try to, hold up a little bit in case something happened? And it didn't work that way. So by the time they put me in the midfield, we just had no go left in us and halfway through that second quarter. But I felt like it wasn't like you guys dominated us. You guys deserved it, and I think you guys were ready for it. But it wasn't like, you had some standout players, and I don't think we really did. You know what I mean? You always had that control over us the entire way. But in hindsight, yes, I wish they had just played me in the midfield because I felt good. Even on that day, I felt good. Like, although I didn't have as good a game as what I had the week before that, I still had, 22 possessions, whatever, starting in the back line. Like I could have maybe have gotten going a little bit as well, but at the end of the day, you guys deserved it. We weren't ready for it. We were lucky to even get there. I think we handed you guys a premiership because Essendon were no doubt the best team that year in the competition. But for everything and how consistent you guys were, you thoroughly deserved it because you really were the team of the decade. And every time we played against you guys, it was always hard because you played hard and tough. And so I always look at that and go, you know what? I don't know. Was North Melbourne a fantastic team? They were just so solid for so long that they deserved it. They were hard and tough, coached by, obviously Dennis Pagan and that too. So I think it was a deserved, you guys deserved to win it more than what we did, But, and of course, beating Essendon for a lot of Carlton supporters was made it even more special, Corey. So the thing is, Carlton supporters would say, who cares? Good that North Melbourne won. They're one of those clubs that we all admire and love and don't, dislike. And I guess Essendon were one of those other clubs that if they had won that, they would have had more premierships than us right now. So thank you for winning anyway. All right, there you go.
I knew I was doing Carlton a favour. Even when I was playing against Carlton, I was still doing you a favour, wasn't it?
You were. That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Now, you touched on it. He was actually a great influence on me, and he was a fantastic influence on you over your career. But talk about the influence of Wayne Britton or anyone else as well. The other one that was great for me, and it seems like we both had him at different times, was Barry Mitchell as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Wayne Britton to me was the greatest coach that I had. Just the insights and understanding of the game like no other coach could. And he would just, even a superstar playing another opposition team, he'd just pinpoint them and go, this is how we're going to play them, and usually would do the job on them. So Bridge came into the club from Brisbane, and he grabbed a handful of these young kids that probably had not a lot of ability, maybe never would have had a chance to play senior footy. Some of them, I won't say all, some would have no doubt, but a guy like Aaron Hamill, who came into the club really raw, and Britain took him under his arms, Mark Porter, Darren Hume, Anthony Franchina, Adrian Hickbon. All these guys that Wayne Britton, like, he grabbed them, trained them so hard, like before training, working on them, they became such an integral part of our football club and team. So in 1998, we won our first game. That's when I sort of played. I just lost my father, so I was that angry that I just went out there and played just on raw emotion. But we lost the next 9 games. So I was getting hammered as a player because I wasn't playing well. As a club, we were getting hammered. And David Parker and I dare say, I don't know if he put up the white flag, but Wayne Britton basically took over. And Wayne Britton, training changed and everything changed. Our game plan started to change. And all of a sudden, we almost made finals. We beat Western Bulldogs by 10 goals or whatever it was that year. Western Bulldogs were unbelievable that year. And we almost made finals that year. And then in 99, took us to a grand final. Year 2000, I got injuries. I think Braddles got injured. Like, we won 13 games in a row that year, and Essendon were a dominant team, but who knows what would have happened if we had played them, because we were hard and tough. And then 2001, he got us to the finals. I did my knee in the second week. Silvani did his hamstring. We were just unlucky with injuries to really not see our full potential. So to me, Wayne Britton was he used to grab me. Let's go for a bike ride. He sort of increased my work rate. And he was a phenomenal influence on my career, as was Barry Mitchell. Barry Mitchell was a teammate of mine. I loved him as a person and as a player and a teammate. He's seen something in me that maybe other people didn't see as well, Barry, and always, even when Carlton got rid of him, he would still ring me after games and say, Kouta, you should do this and that and whatever. He was always by my side, Barry. He was one of those guys that, although he was older, it was like just, I don't know, I just loved him. He's funny and just everything about him. He trained hard, and we used to just have a laugh and go on our footy trips together, to change over tops. I'd wear his skinny and he'd wear mine. I loved him. I loved Barry, I really did. And he would sit down with me and watch, little parts of my game and go, Kouta, here you should have, you're running around. Why didn't in you go? When this happens, just stand over here. And I'm like, whoa, wow, I didn't even know, And I'm doing these things and thinking of him as I'm playing. I go, oh, the ball's here, I'll just stand over here. Boom, all of a sudden I'm marking the ball. And so he taught me a lot of things, Barry. I'm forever indebted to them because I love David Parker. And I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, David, whatever. But I never learned, a lot under David, in all honesty. And, maybe he didn't like me as a person. Maybe I was a bit of a lazy kid, so he didn't like that. Or I'm not sure. I felt like he never really gave me that opportunity or seen in me like what Wayne Britton and Barry Mitchell seen in me. He was always just like, I'll play him there or, whatever, and didn't really communicate a lot with me. So I'm not sure if I seen eye to eye with him. Now, could my career have started better if I had another coach that really embraced me? Maybe. I was sort of a guy that if you liked me and embraced me and taught me, I would do whatever it is that you want me to do. But if you're like that, then I'm a bit like, well, I'm going to stay away too. You know what I mean? And so that's what my relationship was a little bit with David Parker. And although later on, he became a great role model for me. And, I certainly understand and respect him and love him and adore him now. It didn't start that way. And I don't put all the blame to him. I put blame on myself being a little bit of maybe an immature kid, and maybe he didn't like it, and maybe I didn't train as hard as what I should have. And so he didn't want to give me the time of day as well. So it was a little bit of everything. But certainly I have a lot of respect for Parker, and I love the time I had with him. He was my premiership coach, and I'll never, ever forget that.
Yeah. Now, what would you say has been your favourite failure that has actually set you up for future success? Like, what's something that you've actually been through that you failed at, but then ultimately you look back at it now and it's set you up for success? That's something that's happened to you.
Well, I've got no idea there, Corey. You got me on the spot. I mean, there's been a lot of obstacles. I know that. Many times that I've cried, emotionally looking at myself. I think there's always moments in time. I don't know if there's one particular time, Corey. Obviously, the death of my father was one, and that propelled me, but that took a long time for me to, overcome. Some of those days when you have those bad games are the ones that really, hit at home, and then you want to work harder to get yourself better. So it's probably a lot of those sort of moments along my journey, and there was a lot of them, where you didn't play as good. But I don't know if there was one particular thing, because there was, I remember a game against North Melbourne, you guys, I think it was 94, I was on the bench, and then McKay came off with the blood rule. I ran on. A minute later, the coach sent the runner out and said, the coach said to me, Parker, wants to know if you want to play today. And I thought, mate, I'll just run on. What does he want me to do? Like, do a sprint or go and knock someone out? Like, what is it? And a minute later, I was off the bench and, didn't play for the rest of the game, dropped that next week. The problem at the moments, that you really want to hear, but the moments that sort of, made me emotional and, I had to dig deep, Corey, to get through that period. It wasn't easy. I mean, emotionally, I was gone. There was moments that, we talk about UFC when you tap out. I reckon I almost tapped out, but no one's seen. You know what I mean? Like, I almost gave up, and lucky I didn't, because I always say this to people, that 3.5 years it took me to cement my position in the AFL team. In 1995, the grand final was the greatest day of my life. Imagine I gave up. Imagine I tapped out. Well, I didn't see what was coming. The sponsorships of Adidas and the calendars and the promotions and everything nowadays still stem from all those times back then. So I'm forever grateful I didn't give up in those first 3.5 years, because I think I did. You know what I mean? But because I was contracted, I had to keep turning up, that something fell my way. And as the sports psychologist, Anthony Stewart, took a hold of me in 1994 and told me the words, I can, I will, you just watch me. It's to highlight them in my diary every day. Those words changed my life. You know what I mean? They had a major impact, so did Anthony Stewart, because I was given the go again in 95 against Brisbane on the wing, and I ended the game. I think I dreamt it the night before, as I visualised 22 kicks, 4 handballs, and I ended that game with that. And then from that point onwards, I never looked back. And that was the start, really, of my career.
No, that's cool. Now, I know we maybe touched on it before, but what advice would you give everyone out there now, not like the rest of Australia, but and hopefully it doesn't spread to the rest of Australia again, but those that are going through the situation in Victoria again? I know you touched on it at the start, but just give everyone a few tips about how you can not only, I reckon the wrong word for it is you just want to get by. How can you thrive through this period that's a tough period and come out the other side bigger and better than before?
Like what I said, Corey, so many obstacles in my life, so many tough moments. I remember the boot saga as well, when I decided to stay with Adidas and I was contracted to them, and the rest of the club went to Nike, and I was going to almost forfeit a game, and I went for a walk with Mum the night before the game around our block, and we're just talking about things. I think, Corey, when you're going through tough times like I have as well, it's a matter of changing that energy, and you've got to change the things that are currently in your life, and that means you've got to get up earlier. And that's, I did those things. I got up earlier. I went for runs. I went for walks, that extra gym session, whatever it was, to just change that energy flow, because that mindset, that mind can have a major impact. Like me too, it will bring you down, and it can at moments, and still now. It can bring me down. So we've got to change that energy flow. And whatever it is, guys, you can't feel sorry for yourself. It's like, what can I do to better myself, to bring more value to the marketplace, is how you got to think. And so what are some of the things that you can do? Is it because now you're a little bit overweight? Are you just going to give in to that and start putting on, 1 kilo here, 1 kilo after 6 weeks? People can put on 6 kilos. I mean, that's a lot. Times that by 5, that's 30 kilos in 5 years. If like in 6 weeks, if you can put on that. So what is it that you can do to better yourself? I guess yourself and myself, Corey, we've given some hints to people out there and what they can do. It's really up to them what they want to do. But start the day, and if it means you've been sleeping in and starting to get into bad habits. When I slept in when I played footy, Corey, I couldn't get a kick. So I learned, and I was like, oh, but I'm tired, so I've got to sleep longer. So eventually it was like, these are the lessons that I learned. It was like, geez, okay, maybe I need a part-time job. So I got a part-time job. It was getting me up early and getting out there and talking to people and whatever. And all of a sudden my game started to improve. So all these things that I learned, I dislike when people sleep in. Yeah, sometimes it's good for you, but life's about getting up and getting moving and let's get going. And the morning routine, to me, is the best part. If you don't like that morning routine, have an hour of power in the afternoon for yourself. That means go for a walk or read a book or do something, personal development. Have an hour of power in the afternoon. You know what I mean? At night, instead of sitting there watching television for 2 or 3 hours and looking at crap, do something else that's going to improve yourself and your life and the future of yourself and your family. That's how I see it. I don't sit there watching television. I don't sit there and study footy because footy's not my life, and I'm not in the media. I'm not that. I love Carlton. I love watching him. I love watching footy when I can and I have time. But I'm thinking, what can I do to get myself better? And so just start to get yourself in a little bit of mindset like that. And hopefully in time, you'll see you start yourself improve a little bit. It's not always the money side. It's more of the health. And when I've seen my father really unwell and sick, I understood the value of health. It's got to be number one, mental and physical. That's got to be your priority, because when you're not healthy and not feeling well, you don't care about things. You don't want to talk to people. You got to feel dynamic health. So work on yourself every day and let the rest unfold for you.
Yeah, wise advice that you can all follow. Now, down to our final 2 questions, Kouta, and I'm very appreciative of your time. But I know Ange, our producer, and there's Anges everywhere, Kouta, bloody hell. Like there's another Ange that's even my producer. We have managed to track down one of your favourite photos. And, well, the photo that we've gone with is
there's a few rumours about Ange and I floating around the late 90s, which weren't true, Corey, but he was a great mate of mine. I met him in the under-19s, and I was 16, he was 17, a year older. So we went through the ranks together. And people don't realise Ange, he was winning competition best and fairest, like under-10s and all that. And then his father, being, Greek background, said, you're not going to play footy anymore. And so he didn't play for years until he played with the commission flats one game. And the Carlton recruiters were there because our captain at Carlton, Andrew Cavidan, was there, and he was in the same school as Ange, and they were mates. Seeing Ange and said, come down the under-19s and train with us. And then before we know it, Ange was playing senior footy before me. 1990 last round, he's playing senior footy. Phenomenal footballer. If it wasn't for his back injury at his prime, he would have went on to probably be one of Carlton's greats. That half-backman, 191, my height, long arms. It was the quickest guy at the club with Mil Hanna, had great endurance. He could kick a ball and hit you from 60 metres away. He was one of those guys that when he would look for me, I just knew that he would put the ball in this position where it was impossible for even the opposition to spoil, whereas other guys would make it so the opposition could spoil it easy. And just had that freakness of his kicks that he could pinpoint, and the distance to just cover the ground of his foot. I dare say he was probably ahead of his time. It was just give Ange that ball and he could just hit you with a target. So we became very good friends, nightclubbing together. And, I was never one to really enjoy, like, footy trips wasn't one. It was like, oh, let's go. Ange would always say, you've got to come. I was like, all right, I'll go. So thankfully for him, I got to experience so many different parts and cultures of the world that we went and travelled and stuff together. And we're still great mates now. He owns a fish and chippery in Northcote, so I try to go and help him purchase, and I love his food there anyway. And so he's still, we still see each other, and he's just a great mate. And, his parents became like my second parents too, because I lived so much of my time there with Ange, and his mates became my mates, and my mates from the northern suburbs of Thomastown, Lalor, became his mates, and we just had such a great time. So very significant photo, because this still is the greatest day of my life, and I'm not sure how I could ever surpass that feeling of all that heartache and pain, blood, sweat and tears, all because of this one day in September, a day that I'll never, ever forget. It meant the world to me. We celebrated hard after that. I went from 95 kilos to 103, but it was worth every little kilo, Corey. Just goes to show how quickly you can put on weight, mate.
Now, Kouta, we come to our final segment in what is called, this whole series that we do, it's actually called Fork in the Road. And everyone has their fork in the road moment where they could have gone either way. Now, we might have touched on it maybe with a few earlier topics, but where was the fork in the road moment for Anthony Koutoufides where it could have gone either way, but you've managed to really go on and, pardon the pun, kick some goals?
Yeah, I think my first tough decision, Corey, I always talk about was when I played for my beloved Lalor Football Club. As a young kid, I played at East Thomastown, and then my brother and I, we won quite a few premierships there under 10s. And then the recruiters, a couple of people from Lalor came to mum and dad's house, and they're like, we really want your kids to play down at Lalor. And Lalor were the more, prestigious, tougher club or whatever. And some of the players from East Thomastown were there that we knew, Shane Watson, Jamie Soyum, and Peter Lambeth. And so we went to Lalor, and I love Lalor. It was probably only 3 years of my life, but it felt like a lifetime of friendships and bond. There was a lot of, back then, of course, the racism of, being ethnics and the Australians. Well, we were there like as one club, and we got along so well. It didn't matter, my parents were born overseas and the other guys were Australian. We just had a wonderful time there. And my brother's age group too, they were tough and hard. And Lalor Football Club was like a fortress. And I think people didn't like to come and play there because we were a bit, as a club, aggressive and known as that tough club. Not so much myself, but I'm just saying it was one of those venues where people just was like, Lalor, you hear the myth of Lalor was the gangs and the tough and hard, and almost like the Harlem or whatever it was of America was like what we were, which was untrue because I grew up in a great time. But Lalor Football Club meant the world to me. And then when Carlton asked me to go and play the under-19s, and I had to give up my beloved Lalor, that was probably the first moment in my life that really hit me. It was like I didn't want to. My heart was Lalor. I guess my dream was AFL, and so I had to go that way and play in the under-19s. So I know that either way, Corey, because maybe if I didn't have my brother and mates there, I could have easily just stayed at Lalor, maybe never pursued that pathway of AFL because I was that sort of guy. But lucky, I did, and lucky I had great mates that played under-19s, were catching taxis together home, coming home together with Carlton, paid for the taxi. It was a tough time. It wasn't a time I can say was a real enjoyable time. It was a testing time. But if I didn't go through those challenges in life, I would have stayed at Lalor, probably been one of those local footballers that maybe, had a great career locally, but never went on to fulfill his dream. And so lucky I did go that pathway, the harder way, not the easy way, the harder way, mentally, it mentally challenged me in that way, but it was certainly worth it.
Yeah. Now, one final question. Now, I know everyone that ever deals with you, mate, and even I think even from the time I ever met you, one of the things that I think is a credit to you is that out of all the so-called, superstars in the competition, I don't think you'd find anyone more humble than the way that you are now is the way that you've always been. So where did that come from? Because I know that even the people that we deal with at Diamond Valley, and we both, and by the way, we did play I did coach the premiership, Kouta. So
coached really well too. I would say that. You're very good.
But where did that? Even talking to people at Diamond Valley, and we'll give a shout out to Hash because you'll get dirty if we don't give him the great Hash a message. But even the people at Diamond Valley even make mention about the fact that you give your time to anyone, and you've always done that, mate. So I think it's full credit to you that you've always done that. But where did that come from? Was that just from mum and dad and your upbringing that you just treated everyone the same in your values?
I think so. Mum and dad were always that way. Mum was the tougher one of the two. Dad was always by my side. I had my brothers as well, and I feel like if mum thought I got a bit out of line, she would always be the first one to tell me and settle me down. And mate, I was scared of mum, like everyone is of their mum. It was like if she whacked me in the face, it was like, okay, just accept it. It's just like, okay, mum, yeah, you're right, I am. So it always stemmed from that, and she always wanted me to respect people, and like she would pinpoint someone and go, "See, I watch this boy and he kisses it. I want you to be like that." It was always, you know what I mean? Like, this is how I want you to be respectful and stuff. My mum lost both her parents by the age of 22. 20 lost her mum, 22 lost her father. There was 9 kids in her family, came to Australia on her own because her brother was here. Met my father somehow. I don't know how they communicated. They did, one being Greek, one being Italian. And, she's tough. Like when I lost my father at 25 and that destroyed me, I still had my mum. So I'm not sure how I would have coped without mum being around as well. So I think it would definitely stem from them. I always had their support. They'd always tell me I was the best player, even if I wasn't. They'd say, you're the best. My brothers were great supports for me as well. My older brother I competed with, just that I was lucky. I always say I'm lucky. I never would have made AFL if it wasn't for my family, because I just had a wonderful family. I don't know what it was like. I hear from some other people, and it's sad when I hear that, but I can't say I didn't have I didn't have a bad upbringing. I had the most incredible upbringing. And when I think of times, and as great as times was in footy, I always think back to the 80s and 70s, just simple life, not a lot of money, but we had fun and love. And I think love is the most important thing. So I try to instill that to my kids nowadays.
Yeah. And look, just on that, I think for anyone that wants to follow Kouta before I wrap all this up, but how can everyone, if they want to follow you, Kouta, what are all the different platforms that they can follow you, and more importantly, give the business a plug as well?
Yeah, there's only two really. I mean, it's the Instagram I'm mainly on there. I do a lot of stories on there so people can see what I do throughout the day, nutrition-wise, and a little bit of my training and a little bit of mindset stuff I do as well, and also my public Facebook page, which is not as active over there. It's mainly if they really want to see what goes on in my life, the Instagram page. Definitely. I have so many clients now I'm looking after, Corey, and we're building a business. It's been just a great time for me.
Yeah. Well, look, on behalf of everyone, I am incredibly grateful you've made the time, and I always look forward to, it's one thing every year that I didn't get the Brownlow medal, but the one thing that I am eternally grateful for is that they always put me on the table with Kouta and Susie, and we always get to have a few beers at the AFL MVP. So on behalf of everyone and on behalf of me, mate, I appreciate it, and I do look forward to hopefully seeing you at the back end of the year, maybe the MVP, if not virtually.
Yeah, no, that'd be nice, Corey. Maybe even at Doty's gym for a workout like the old days as well.
Yes.
That'd be good. Well done, mate. Great interview, and keep up the good work, Corey.
Thanks, mate.